We are live, Hunchtime Podcast Mark 2. Been out of action for a couple of weeks, but sport has gone on and there's been a lot of stories. Mr. Lunchtime, how are you?
How's things, Big C?
Never better, never better. Just quickly to recap, Super League came and went in the time since our last podcast. What are your thoughts kind of in the aftermath?
Well, it's left a trail of carnage, hasn't it? You have Sky, who are now the voice of football, talking about it every day. And they're not going to stop anytime soon, I think. But it just kind of took everybody by surprise. It's always been in the background, but it just popped up out of nowhere one Sunday afternoon and the whole football world collapsed, really.
Yeah, the whole football world came up in arms. And suddenly Sky are like the deifying Gary Neville for such a fantastic character.
Yeah, the voice of football.
Yeah, voice of football. And you, as you were telling me earlier, he was a shady enough character in running his own club.
That's for sure, yeah. Sacking a manager after winning a trophy when he's the one on Monday Night Football telling the whole world that you have to give managers time.
Yeah, in the exact same breath, talking about how Ollie should get more time and how Frank Lampard should have gotten more time, and just the hypocrisy. But I think it's very dangerous that Sky Sports, who would have been jumping over themselves to buy the rights,
buy TV rights, yeah,
would have been the first, and then suddenly they're the bastion of sort of traditional football. But then, like in the Champions League as well, the last day we see City City playing PSG, both owned by Saudi Arabia and the UAE, is it?
Qatar and the UAE.
Sorry, Qatar and the UAE, yeah, respectively. So like franchise football is here, whether you like it or not. But to pop on, we don't want to talk about the Super League. It's been done to death, and I think everybody's sick of hearing about it. It could have been a good idea, possibly, if they, made it a meritocracy and stuff. But one really interesting thing, Lunchy, is I was listening to the American side of it, and because they're sports, they all come through a draft system and a college system directly into the pro ranks. It makes sense for them to have franchises with no relegation, because obviously, like in the NFL and stuff, if you finish last, you're going to get the cream of the crop, like Jacksonville did this year, getting Trevor Lawrence in the draft. So it totally works for them. It sort of encourages parity. If you come last, you get the best players. If you win it, like Tampa Bay, you're going to be picking last in every round of the draft. But they didn't understand, despite owning the clubs. Joe Glazer will tell you he still doesn't understand the offside rule, apparently, which is really disturbing that his name was on this. But let's move forward. Football for the weekend, hunchtime.com, betting tips, talk to me.
They're all up on our hunch list for this week again, Biggie. We had a good start to the hunch list Wednesday night with Sporting Lisbon winning. I think our best ones for the weekend are probably in Germany, where you have Champions League chasing Wolfsburg and Frankfurt, both at home. Both should win. They're fairly priced. Dortmund are playing Leipzig, so it gives them a good chance to push a few points ahead of Dortmund again before the big game with Leipzig on Saturday night.
Yeah, and on those, I absolutely love both of those bets. We have them both on the hunch list. I think Frankfurt at over 1.5 goals around even money.
Even money. Yeah.
The reason we, just to everybody out there, the reason we introduced the hunch list, we used to do 4 to 6 articles on soccer every week, trying to put in a bit of humour and some interesting content, as well as betting analysis. But because we felt that we were missing out on so many games, we consolidated it, popped it in a list at the top of the channel for you to pick out your favourites. So we do it on a Monday night, and we take the odds on a Monday, and then if the odds change later in the week, so be it. But they're yours to pick from. I think we have 15 on the hunch list this week, so a lot of for your accumulator at the weekend.
Yeah, you can pick out your favourite 3 or 4, and like a lot of people like to pick them by the day as well. They might be sitting down watching soccer on Saturday, so we try to give a few for every day, and whatever suits yourself best. We don't put too much Premier League because, as everybody knows, it's very unpredictable, and we're not going to just put stuff on site for the sake of it. Like one example would be, it's everybody's natural instinct just to go for Crystal Palace to beat Sheffield United tomorrow. But when you look into it was on my mind. But when you look into it, can you really trust Palace, who've been safe since Christmas, to win any game? And like the answer is no. So we're not just going to put one on side for the sake of
Palace
it.
is possibly as well. We do have Leicester tonight at home to Newcastle. Leicester to win an under 4.5 goals. That was even money earlier in the week. I think that's absolutely super bet.
Well, that's the thing this time of the year. Like, you have your Palace and Sheffield United game tomorrow. Sheffield are relegated. Palace are mid-table. They're not going to go any higher or lower, really. Whereas Leicester have something to play for. So when you are looking for football bets this time of the year, always the best thing to do is look for what a team has to play for. And if a team has need, they're more than likely going to win the game over a team that has literally nothing to play for. So that's a good strategy I've always used. And usually works.
Yeah,
this time of the season.
100%. Like I remember being caught lots of times on accused before with teams. You see, for example, Leicester playing Newcastle. Had it been 2 weeks ago, and Newcastle were fighting for their lives, maybe you don't put that in because just that added impetus is there for Newcastle.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, don't forget tomorrow as well. They're not on the hunch list as we don't. As obviously you can't trust the Championship. It's the most unpredictable league in the world. But usually on the final day, it's not a bad idea to have a little queue on both teams to score. There's only 3 games tomorrow, I think, off the top of my head, with something on the line. It's the last game of the season. Teams are already on their holidays. For anyone who likes a crazy accumulator, I wouldn't put them off putting €2 on picking 10 games and both teams to score. There's only one game I wouldn't put in, that's Sheffield Wednesday and Derby, because the loser of that is relegated. So that is all likely to be 1-0 either way.
That could be
it'd be nervous, affair and cagey and all that sort of stuff. So I'd avoid that. Another great hope of English football management could be on his way out with Wayne Rooney, following in the footsteps of Frank Lampard.
Yeah, just on that, are you surprised at all by how well Tuchel has settled in and how fast he settled in? Like a lot of people were saying it was just kind of it's just the bounce that Chelsea got at the beginning, and now 22 games in, they realise that actually this isn't just the bounce of getting rid of Frank.
Well, I said to you at the start of the season, Biggie, that Chelsea were possibly good enough to challenge for a league title, and obviously that was made up very silly by Christmas time when they were trailing in 7th place when Frank got the boot. But like the squad they have, it should be no surprise to anyone that they're doing so. It's been made out actually in the media that's a bit of an underdog story with Chelsea this season, coming from nowhere to get to a Champions League final. Like, they spent a lot of money last year on quality young players. They had the wrong manager there for the likes of Kai Havertz and Werner. Werner's already still not scoring, although he scored during the week. But he is causing a lot of damages, running in behind and all that. And he seems to be getting a bit of confidence back. He scored a load of goals in Champions League and Bundesliga and for Germany, so he's not that bad of a player. It was just a confidence thing and being managed wrong by a guy who simply didn't have a clue. And that was even you could go to defenders like Christensen wasn't playing under Frank. Rudiger wasn't playing under Frank.
Alonso.
Azpilicueta, Alonso. His whole thing was that they're not ready to challenge just yet.
Yeah, with team of World Cup winners, Kovacic, World Cup finalist, Kante wasn't good enough to play defensive midfield. He was playing him out of position.
100%. He just didn't have a clue. I think that's being proved. And Tuchel is a good coach. He's proved that with Dortmund and PSG. And we've seen what a shambles PSG are during the week when things go against them. But the fact that he had them 45 minutes away from winning a Champions League tells you all you need to know about him, really.
Yeah, best ever PSG winning percentage of all time, which is something to say. I know those stats are stupid, but for PSG, who are head and shoulders and legs and money above everybody else in the league, to have a stat like that, I think it's most wins ever, most goals as a PSG coach. So he comes in with a bit. I'm surprised how good they are at the back, how fast he was able to change that.
But the other thing about Tuchel is, look at PSG this year. They aren't even guaranteed to win the French league. If Lille win their remaining 4 games, they win the league. Yeah. And that was always a given under Tuchel that they'd win the league. Yeah. So it just shows you he had something about him that simply Lampard does not have.
No.
That.
for the sake of time, let's go straight over to GA.
Yeah.
Talk to me. You have a write-up on www.hunchtime.com. Talk to me first about the league in general. Happy to be back.
Yeah, it's great to be back, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some interesting games. Like, there's no final this year, so that could bring a challenge element into it. Games could become very open and, with nothing on the line. But then the other side is we're only 6 weeks away from championship, so you are trying to get your place on a team. You are, like, coaches are trying to get structures in play, that what sort of system they're going to play with and all that. And there's a lot of interesting teams out there. Limerick are still ahead of everybody, but I think it's been overplayed a bit of how far ahead they actually are. I think the winter All-Ireland suits them. Now, they won the All-Ireland 3 years ago as well in the summer. But the size comparison between them and most other counties, maybe Galway apart, like, they were able to bully most teams last year. I don't know if they'll be able to do that in summer hurling. Like, it's only 2 years ago Cork beat them in the championship. I know it was a Munster group game, but fast hurling, it's a different ball game to what they were playing in last winter and last year's All-Ireland.
Definitely. They're freakish athleticism and size all over the pitch. And that sort of running game that they have, I think, suited winter hurling as well, and heavy pitches. And then, like, Galway actually matched up fairly well against them because of Galway can match them for size. Galway were quite unlucky on that day. They lost by 2, didn't they? And an early injury to Cathal Mannion, late injury to Joe Canning, that probably didn't matter at that stage. But
they were level when with 78 minutes gone on the clock. So, like, there was nothing really in that game. Like, it was the only test, really, let's be honest, that Limerick got in the whole of the championship last year. They cruised through every other game.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of interesting teams out there. Like, you might think I'm mad, but Cork, Donal O'Grady going back in there, helping out with Kieran Kingston. I say helping out. There's no way Donal O'Grady is a second choice to anyone.
It's a very Cork team to the one Donal with Sean O'Halpine, John Gardner, The Rock.
It is, but they were a nothing team before he took them over either. They were going nowhere. They had strikes. They were kind of just typical Cork, nice fancy hurlers, but he put a bit of steel into them, a bit of a plan. The hurlers are there in Cork. There's such potential there. They've had 2 brilliant under-21 teams in the last 2 years. Good minor team 3 years ago. They kind of pushed on a bit. And if they can get 3, 4, 5 lads out of that, they won't be that far away. Might be a year early for them this year, but they won't be far away over the next few years.
Do you think they'll have anything going for them in the league, particularly this weekend against Waterford? What do you fancy?
I fancy Waterford. I just think they're so settled and they know what they're about. Liam Cahill has just put such a steelness into them and a belief that I think they're going to be very keen to kick on. The fact that they had 3 terrible years after the 2017 All-Ireland, they didn't win a championship game in 2 years before he came in. I think that sticks with teams, and I don't think they want to go back to that. They'll be very keen to drive it on. Especially that's the impression you get from a few interviews and that anyways. And like Cork are going to be, they'll be Cork, like they'll put up a big score as they always do. But I don't think they have the backs to hold the Bennetts and Desi Hutchinson and them this weekend. I just think Waterford will be that bit ahead. There's me later in the championship with a good showing from Cork in the league. I would change my mind, but at this moment in time, you couldn't but fancy Waterford at the weekend, especially on the handicap market where they're getting a point, which I think is crazy. But I suppose if you can go that way, you can take the draw out of the equation as well.
I think that is actually a good shout, because traditionally these two, when they meet, draw, there's been a lot of draws, it'd be like an unusual amount for hurling. So taking the draw in the equation, you're saying Waterford +1. Let's Dublin bring Kilkenny into Parnell Park.
Well, they have a great record in Parnell Park. It's very hard to understand where we are with Dublin, though. They're good one day, bad the next. You kind of have to go for the consistency of Kilkenny. I've seen their team this morning. They have a very strong team names, which is very unusual. Very unusual for this time of the year that you'd have such a strong team in the first day out of the league. But obviously Cody is laying down his marker as he always does and wants to win a league title.
Yeah. And what are you tipping for that, if anybody fancies a bet? I know, actually, just to everybody as a disclaimer, we have it all over the site, but especially in the hurling this weekend. It might be better watched than bet. So these are just our opinions, but like, go against them if you like. They're just the opinions of two pseudo sports experts, I suppose. But it's especially for the first week of the league, you don't really know what team's mindset is going into it. You don't know what they want to get from it. Some teams might say, like, maybe Galway want to blood 5 or 6 new lads, and then maybe some teams are going home because they're on a roll. It seems like Kilkenny and Clare are taking it really seriously, just from the team Clare put out. A word on Antrim back in D1 hurling. Will it be?
It's great. It's great to see them back, isn't it? Growing up, like Antrim were like, I won't say competitive, but like especially their club teams would always, in the All Ireland Club Series, would always give any team a game. And it's just good to see them back. They have a good tip man going up there. He's doing a great job up there. But like, this is a totally different ball game. It's only 2 years ago. Like even last year, they were playing the likes of Wicklow and Meath and these teams. Like they beat Kerry in a Joe McDonagh Cup final last year by 3 points. Like, this is different ball game altogether. I hope they put up a good show, but I just can't see it. I just don't think that they're conditioned to compete with the top counties just yet. But we've seen it with Laois a few years up in Division 1, and it doesn't take that long to be competitive. But I don't think you can do it straight away.
Yeah, they're getting 9 points up in Cargan Park in Belfast. Do you think that'll be enough for them, especially considering the team that Clare named?
Yeah, I'll put it like this. I think Tony Kelly will score more than Antrim by himself, and just the things like silly frees that they're going to give away, that playing at a pace they have never played at, is going to lend itself to 10, 12 soft frees that they wouldn't be giving away in the lower divisions. And like, I just can't see them covering that spirit. I think Clare will just have too much for them. One thing about Clare is very interesting. They've named John Conlon at centre back. He's always been like a very good full forward, as good as any of them. One of the only forwards I've ever seen give Dolly Burke a tough time.
He's a brilliant.
But yeah, it's great to see him back. At centre back, it's very interesting to see how he'll get on there. He could be like Declan Hannon when he moved from the backs to Limerick from the forwards in Limerick back to centre back. It was a masterstroke by John Kiley. Could we see something similar with Conlon? He's a good reader of the game, great striker. Could be a brilliant as a spare man back around the backs. He could be very, very, very influential.
It'll be absolutely fascinating this weekend. Will we move on to? But again, all the write-ups are on www.hunchtime.com. We just do this all for free as well. It's not sponsored. We're just lunatics, like spending 40 hours each a week writing up sports articles. Moving on to rugby, Lions tour coming up this summer. Lucky to have a Lions tour this summer.
Very lucky.
I think a normal amount of shocks with the Gatland squad.
Yeah, the big one from an Irish perspective is Johnny Sexton, I think. Like, personally, I would agree with the decision not to bring him. I don't know how you feel about it, but it's caused uproar in the Irish media anyways, that's for sure.
Yeah, like I've a few things about this. Like, Sexton is on 3 concussions in the last 9 weeks. He had got a concussion 3.5 weeks ago and still isn't back. Couldn't play against La Rochelle last weekend in the loss. But I think Ireland's reaction especially was very, very strange. I think Irish rugby fans need to be a little bit more introspective, because of all our players, we have 8 named, which is the same as Scotland. I think Scotland deservedly should have more players in this Lions test. The surprise for me, I thought, like, this time 12 months ago, James Ryan was an absolute shoo-in. But again, they're bringing Henderson. Ty Byrne has maybe played himself onto the starting team, but definitely he'll be pushing for a squad place. But I think the biggest thing I took from this, and what I haven't heard from media outlets, is I think Gatland is going for players who are able to play in a couple of different positions. The big ones for me, he left Ringrose behind and he brought Elliot Daly as a 13, but Daly can also play 15. And it's also played in the Highveld, Mr. Lunchtime in South Africa, and Elliot Daly can kick it a mile. So
Yeah.
in these tight games, maybe a 60-meter kick in the 70th minute or so, that could be the difference. So having somebody with that sort of boot there, Bundyaki went from Connacht. Great to see a Connacht player going, but I was
Brilliant, yeah, brilliant.
amazed. If I was Ringrose, who is, I think, just in every way a superior player, I'd be a little bit disappointed. But I think back to my point on the players who have like the option to play in different positions. It's not like other tours where you could bring a squad of 40 plus. They're naming 37. They can't bring somebody over immediately. You're going to get 5 or 6 injuries. It's going to take 2 weeks, maybe longer, to get somebody quarantined and get them over if there's an injury. So that's why maybe Ian Henderson went instead of James Ryan, because Henderson can play, lock, or he can play 6, 7 at a push. So same thing with Tyburn. He's good second row.
Yeah.
He's amazing back row. I think that most of the British Isles outside of Ireland were kind of surprised that Ireland got so many. The Sexton thing, I think, is understandable. Just the number of injuries he's had on a tour where they can't afford to have injuries to get replacements in.
No.
So I thought that was understandable. And if Sexton and Bigger is a toss-up for me anyway.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I'd agree with all that. I think the COVID thing has had a massive say on who he's picked, as you said, and you don't need me to say any more on it, but I think that is a big factor in the selections.
And size, those enormous fuckers. That's just...
Size is a big thing. Well, South Africa, if you don't have size against South Africa, you might as well stay at home.
I don't know. Did Japan beat them in the World Cup with a fucking tiny team? Remember, was that was 6
yeah,
that's how Eddie Jones got the English job, pulling off.
That's Eddie. Yeah, that was Eddie Jones. Yeah.
And on Eddie Jones as well, Sam Simmons, who Eddie Jones refused, despite being the best number 8, maybe in Europe, definitely the most, maybe not the best, but definitely the most dynamic number 8 in Europe. That he's a human highlight reel. Just type in Sam Simmons to YouTube and watch his highlights. He's so fast. But Eddie Jones refused to put him in the England squad, and then he's taken for the Lions as representative.
Yeah.
So Jack Conan as well got an Irish call, which I thought was justified.
Yeah, his performances for Leinster are outstanding.
CJ Standard, Irish team for a long time, but
yeah, week in, week out, when you watch Leinster, especially in these big Heineken Cup games, he's always, no matter whether they're winning, losing, under trouble, whatever, he is always the go-to man for them. He's always a consistent 8 out of 10 every day he goes on the pitch.
Yeah, so athletic and dynamic as well. He's huge as well.
He is, yeah, he is. And he's going to get his chance now with Ireland with Stander retired, and hopefully he takes it.
Yeah, it's going to be some battle between him and Doris, if Doris can stay fit for a little while, because we have some superstar 8s. I know that they're both very inexperienced, but the potential there is massive. But again, it's rugby and they're back rowers. So, Peter O'Mahony was just incredible, first name on the team sheet up until last year, and now you wouldn't mention him in the top 8 or 9 Irish back rowers. So things change so quickly with injuries and stuff in rugby, and form as well. So I think that's okay for this weekend.
Yeah, that's all sounds good.
We'll dedicate this podcast to mental health, especially men's mental health during the lockdown. I know a lot of people had a very tough time of it, especially if people weren't working and stuff, the lack of purpose. But look out for each other and look out for your own mental health. If you're having a good day, it sounds a bit silly, but say, I'm having a great day, feeling good, just so you're able to recognize it yourself. Thanks
100%.
Thanks to everybody again who's just the response for Hunchtime has been blown us away, to be honest.
We never thought we'd have such support. It's quite unbelievable, to be honest. Yeah,
it's amazing. But again, I just love writing about sport. You've really enjoyed it as well. Yeah,
really, really enjoy it, and really looking forward to the GA starting now this weekend and watching a few games again. I know we have a lot of GA followers out there, and I'm sure they will be as well.
Yeah, guys, give us any feedback on Instagram, Twitter. Give us abuse, give us suggestions. If you'd like us to bring back the soccer articles, I know we've had that a lot. That could definitely be a possibility instead of the hunch list. yeah, we'd be more than happy to hear any feedback, and just thank you so much for the support. Have a lovely weekend. Enjoy the hurling.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Lunstone.